What if everything you think you are is not real, but only a story that has been slowly built inside your mind over time? A story shaped by memories, habits, labels, and expectations that you never consciously chose, but gradually accepted. From the moment you were born, you were given a name, a language, and a system of beliefs about how life works. People around you defined what is right and wrong, what success means, and what kind of person you should become. Without noticing, you absorbed all of it and turned it into your identity. Over time, this identity began to feel stable, solid, and permanent. You say, "This is who I am," as if it were a fact, something fixed and unchangeable. But if you look closely, you begin to notice something strange. Your thoughts change constantly. Your emotions shift from moment to moment. Your opinions evolve, and your behavior adapts depending on the situation. Yet despite all this change, you still feel like the same person. This sense of continuity feels real, but it may be nothing more than a narrative your mind is constantly maintaining. A story that connects past experiences into a single thread and calls it you. The problem is that once you believe this story is absolute truth, it begins to define your limits. You stop questioning who you are because you think the answer is already known. And in doing so, you stop seeing what you could become.
This idea has been explored for centuries, especially in ancient philosophy. One of the most radical perspectives comes from the teachings of the Buddha, who argued that there is no permanent, unchanging self. According to this view, what we call I is simply a collection of constantly changing processes. Thoughts arise and disappear, emotions come and go, sensations shift, and perceptions evolve. There is no fixed center behind all of this. It is like observing a flame and calling it the same flame, even though it is constantly consuming new fuel and changing form. Or like watching a river and believing it is one thing, even though the water is never the same from one moment to the next. In the same way, there is no single point you can identify as your true self. Your personality today is not the same as it was years ago. Your beliefs have changed, your preferences have shifted, and your perspective has evolved. Yet your mind creates the illusion of continuity by connecting these changes into a coherent story. This story feels stable because it is familiar, not because it is fixed. And once you begin to question this illusion, something profound happens. You realize that the self you protect so strongly may not exist in the way you thought it did.
Modern psychology supports this idea in ways that are both fascinating and unsettling. Research shows that memory is not a perfect recording of the past. It is not like a video that you can replay exactly as it happened. Instead, memory is flexible, selective, and constantly changing. Every time you remember something, you slightly alter it. You fill in missing details, remove parts, and reshape the experience based on your current beliefs and emotions. Over time, your memories become less about what actually happened and more about the story you have constructed around those events. And since your identity is largely built from these memories, it means that your sense of self is also constantly shifting. Even your personality, which feels consistent, is influenced by context. You act differently when you are alone compared to when you are with others. You think differently under stress than when you are calm. You present different versions of yourself depending on the environment. This does not mean you are fake. It means you are adaptable. It means your identity is not a single fixed structure, but a dynamic system that changes depending on circumstances. And once you recognize this, the idea of a permanent self becomes harder to defend.
So why does the illusion of a stable identity feel so convincing? The answer lies in the way your brain is designed. Your brain is constantly trying to create order out of chaos. It looks for patterns,
builds connections and organizes experiences into a narrative that makes sense. Without this process, life would feel fragmented and overwhelming. So your mind creates a sense of continuity, a story that connects past, present, and future into a single identity. This story gives you stability, but it also creates limitations. Because once you believe that your identity is fixed, you begin to act in ways that reinforce that belief. You tell yourself, I am not the type of person who does this, or I could never change that. These statements feel true, but they are based on assumptions, not facts. They are boundaries created by your own narrative. And the more you repeat them, the stronger they become. Over time, you stop exploring new possibilities because they do not fit the story you believe about yourself. You become predictable, not because you are truly fixed, but because you have accepted a limited version of who you are.
In the end, the idea that you are not a fixed self is not meant to take something away from you, but to give something back. It gives you the ability to see beyond the story you have been telling yourself. It allows you to step back and observe your thoughts, your emotions, and your identity without being completely defined by them. You begin to understand that the you defend is not a permanent structure, but a process that is constantly unfolding. And once you see this clearly, you are no longer trapped by it. You are no longer forced to act according to a script written by your past. Instead, you gain the ability to choose how you respond, how you think, and how you live. This does not mean you lose your identity. It means you gain control over it. You move from being a fixed character in a story to becoming the one who writes it. And that is where real freedom begins. Not in holding on to a stable self, but in understanding that you were never as fixed as you believed.
There is another layer to this idea that is even more unsettling. If your identity is not fixed, then much of what you call your personality may simply be repetition, patterns you have practiced so many times that they feel natural. The way you react to stress, the way you think about yourself, even the way you speak, all of it can be traced back to habits reinforced over time. You are not necessarily choosing these reactions in the moment. You are repeating them. And repetition creates the illusion of identity. The more you repeat something, the more it feels like you. But if it is learned, it can also be unlearned. This means that many of the traits you believe define you are not permanent features, but temporary patterns. And once you become aware of this, you gain a level of control that most people never reach. Because instead of reacting automatically, you begin to observe. And in that space between stimulus and response, something new becomes possible. But awareness alone is not enough, because the mind resists change. It prefers familiarity, even when that familiarity is limiting. The identity you have built may not always serve you, but it feels safe because it is known. Letting go of it requires stepping into uncertainty, into a space where you are no longer defined by your past patterns.
And here is the final realization that changes everything. If your identity is not fixed, then neither are your limits. The fears you carry, the doubts you repeat, the story you believe about your past, none of it is permanent. It only feels real because you keep returning to it. You keep reinforcing it. But the moment you step back and see it clearly, it begins to lose its power. You are not your past decisions. You are not your current habits. You are not even your thoughts. You are the one who observes them, the one who can choose differently. And this is where true control begins. Not in forcing yourself to change, but in understanding that you were never as limited as you believed. The identity you were protecting was not a truth. It was a pattern. And patterns can be broken. So the real question is no longer who are you, but something far more powerful. If nothing about you is fixed, what are you willing to become?